In April 2003, a group of students were peacefully protesting about the American Army using their school as an army barrack. Indiscriminately, the US soldiers decided to open fire, leaving 13 dead and 75 wounded. And before this case, journalist Chris Hughes witnessed US soldiers opening firing at a civilian at a bakery store on the 1st of April 2003. And another incident on the 30th of April, where yet again the US Army decided to attack a funeral, killing 2 civilians and wounding 14 soldiers and 14 adults and children. The genocide massacres commenced with sustained and target bombing campaigns aimed directly at the homes of dozens of defenceless civilians. This resulted in the killing and maiming of dozens of them, carried out under the false pretext of pursuing the leaders of resistance, which started in September and come to a close in November 2004. A powerful documentary, Fallujah: The Hidden Massacre, was broadcasted by RA, the Italian state broadcaster, which he presented new evidence that the United States dropped massive quantities of white phosphorus on the Iraq city of Fallujah in November 2004, killing both Iraq resistant fighters and civilians, with the appalling burns that signature of chemical weapons being used.
New media technology such as the internet makes it easily accessible for terrorists to communicate with others and news stations alike, to cause high amounts of fear around the world and hatch terrorist attacks to threaten certain societies. The fact that the attack on Fallujah is hidden from the world in many aspects, whereas if this particular attack was to happen to a country like the US, it would be publicised hugely. How can you justify this? The USA are seen to be fighting the war on terror and want to be rid of the evil, when in fact, in this case and many others we have seen publicised through the media over the years, are they not the ones causing the innocent harm and committing evil acts? Why was George Bush so adamant that the statistics were not seen, betraying to the world that they knew that they had done wrong, but were not about to condone what they had done? They would just hide the evidence. With acts of terrorism such as 9/11 and other worldwide known acts of terrorism given huge amounts of media publicity, why is this not the same in cases such as Fallujah? They are seen as the terrorists. When we talk about the foreign other committing the acts of terrorism, we forget about Western countries.
Moral panics. The media have created a picture of what terrorism is. From the background and religion, it has created the West to fear foreigners, such as Asian people. Like when we see Asian people, we won't feel comfortable around them. But surely these are signs of revenge attacks, as America and Britain have done the same to their countries. They've done the same thing to Fallujah and stuff. Over the years, it has even been more escalated by like the maximum of high security in public places such as airports, bus stations, buses, undergrounds, London undergrounds, especially if luggage is unattended. The police are really, and security is really strong on those kind of things there.
This statement here highlights how terrorists use the media to portray their threats towards society, which has been seen in many cases by specific terrorist groups. But again, this does not apply to Fallujah, as we have touched on before. It is described as the hidden massacre, which the people of Fallujah had no idea was about to occur. The USA and UK soldiers are placed within Iraq and other countries alike to maintain peace and fight the war against terror and the Taliban, and make life better for all those living within the country. They are meant to be making the civilians feel safe again in their own communities and country, not killing innocent civilians, because George Bush classes them as terrorists for the most ridiculous of reasons. Why is it in many countries, if you were to commit a war crime, you would be severely dealt with and in the worst case executed, but all the soldiers involved within Fallujah were almost praised for fighting the terrorists and got rid of those who were seen to be causing harm? But we know this was definitely not the case, when many of those killed were young and women. Are these terrorists? The civilians of Fallujah had no weapons or means to fight back, they were simply set upon. The soldiers have demoralised Fallujah as a city and made them forever fearful of what is to come next. No remorse was shown by America at all, only praise for their soldiers. Do the Western world wonder why there is so much hatred towards them as countries and why there are revenge attacks around the world when they are committing these atrocities? It is only a short time ago that a US insurgent was shown on the news to have gone from his base and shot and killed 16 Afghan civilians. He was not shown to have committed a war crime, but was said to have been mentally ill. But if someone from Fallujah would have done this, they would not have cared about their mental health and would simply have been a terrorist. The US soldier, who was said to have entered the civilians' houses around 3 a.m. at night, so they stood no chance of survival, when he then shot the innocent civilians and poured chemicals over their bodies and burnt them. How do you justify this? Of course, the US soldier could have been mentally ill, but why was this not assessed before to prevent these vicious attacks? Also, why would the Americans admit anything else? They would not be happy to admit that the soldier knew what he was doing and was not mentally ill. As we have seen from the Fallujah attacks, they are very reluctant to admit anything that makes them as a country look evil. How do they expect the Afghan and Iraqi people to trust our soldiers when they have committed these acts towards their own civilians with no warning? Also, with these atrocious attacks occurring, how can they expect the civilians not to react, putting us at more risk of revenge terrorist attacks on our country and around the world? This picture here shows the phosphorus smoke screens that was fired on Fallujah as part of an early morning patrol in November 2004, which was part of the second attack. How did the people of Fallujah stand a chance? Doctors in Iraq are having to deal with up to 15 times as many chronic deformities in infants compared to a year ago, which highlights the huge impacts of the attacks on the innocent. In the USA and UK's aim to protect civilians and fight those seen to be the terrorists, they have not caused many lives to be lost innocently, but lasting effects that will continue to prevent infants and unborn babies in the future. The innocent will continue to suffer throughout the future. The lasting effects of the attack on Fallujah are said to be bigger than those in Hiroshima. So why is Hiroshima so well known throughout the world, whilst many people have no knowledge at all about Fallujah? Some of the atrocious birth defects following the Fallujah attacks are babies born with 2 heads, babies born with multiple tumours, and others with serious nervous problems. Again, the innocent are continuing to suffer. Touching on human rights, how has America and the UK got away with this? These newborn babies' rights were taken away from them before they are even born, as they have no chance of a normal life, only the horror that the insurgents have already created for them.